Look at this guy, everything he does on rings looks so effortless. I spent 3 years living in China and got to know their culture pretty closely. Even when they become older, they continue to train hard unlike any other countries. In this episode, I would like to tell you what is the secret of Chinese superpower and why they dominate in gymnastics so much. You will also learn about the challenges the Chinese go through on their way to become champions, why it is incredibly prestigious to be an athlete in China, how much developed calisthenics in China as a kind of street analog of gymnastics, and what genetic trait makes the Chinese excellent gymnasts. And let's start with what the Chinese are even capable of. Look at this guy, named Lu Yuan, while performing cross on rings. He's just stretching his neck like he's sitting on a couch. Why not? Remember, no matter how well you do something, there will always be a Chinese who will do it better. China is the first country in terms of population. In 2024, this number is 1,425,000,000 people. So even based on the banal theory of probability, the chance that there will be a Chinese who will be better is extremely high. But in this episode, we will not play with the probabilities, but we'll try to start from the considerations of culture and habits. And I'm going to start with some personal observations. Sport grounds in China are always crowded. Once I even came at 5 AM to work out in silence and I couldn't do it. The playground was completely crowded. But it's important to note that 90% of visitors were senior people. They dance on the streets, sing, and do a lot of other interesting things. But don't let the lack of young people on the streets mislead you. The fact is that most of the Chinese athletes do it professionally. In a sports school, there is a strict regime and consistent training. Dates with parents are on certain schedules. But none of the parents worry about it, because only in sports schools are taught by competent, educated teachers. The Chinese understand if they have given their child to sports school, he will get the best education, and in China this is truly valued. To be precise, the typical gymnast training schedule in China looks something like this. If you are under 6 years old, on average you train 12 hours a week. That is about 2.5 hours a day. But in China this can be often increased twice as much if the coach sees championship potential. Between the ages of 16 and 18, the amount of training increases and athletes train 2 times a day. And the number of training hours per week can reach from 30 to 46 hours. And one day is usually always given for rest, because no matter how much of a cyborg a gymnast may be, it is impossible to become a champion without proper recovery. Among other things, a lot of attention is paid to mental health, because often performing at the Olympic means failures, which are very difficult to cope with when your whole life is essentially devoted to sport. Twice a year, representatives from the sport committees visit all these schools, look at the result of students and select the worthy ones, who then move from the provinces to the capital school. Training is very tough. Children from 5 to 6 years old are trained to the limit of their abilities to become Olympic champions. In China, an Olympic athlete is literally provided with everything. A car, an apartment, food and other household needs are also taken care of by the government. Olympians in China, no matter whether they win medals or not, automatically become absolute heroes. For example, portraits of the Olympians who competed in Beijing in 2008 were displayed in almost every provincial trade union committee in China. The whole of China knows these people in their faces. Where else have you seen something like this? All this naturally affects the motivation of Chinese to train and improve. And they don't train just for medals. They really dedicate their lives to it. And unlike most countries, they keep their shape until they're very old. For example, I trained with the Paralympians. Look at the legs of this man, who is 55 years old. His calves are incredible, and although I was ashamed to compare his calves with mine, but I did it, and it looked very sad. For me. And this old man doing a flip lift, his trainer. And how old do you think he is?
Yeah, cool. Thank you. Say please the camera. How old are you?
Number 1.
number 82 years old.
82 years. Very cool. Thank you.
However, it is also worth mentioning that sometimes on Chinese sport grounds you can not only get a dose of motivation but also have a good love from the exercise they perform.
Huh? What is going on? I'm still not really sure.
But back to the gymnasts. Speaking about genetics, at the height of 190 centimeters and weight of 90 kg, it will be much more difficult to perform combinations with your body weight. And as we know, Chinese athletes in the majority are short. Actually, for the same reason, the Chinese have never won the Mr. Olympia contests. And in general, in the world of bodybuilding, representatives of this country are very few. Many people immediately remember such an athlete as Chul Sun, but although he's Asian, he's Korean by nationality. For example, remember the guy from the beginning of the video. Although he's 26 years old, but at the same time he's small as a teenager. Anyway, in gymnastics not only genetics is important, but how early you start your training and how seriously you take it, because at the base of training is perfecting strength and dynamics combinations, and of course neuromuscular connection training, which are best developed in childhood. And as I said earlier, the Chinese start gymnastics as well as any other activity very early and take training very seriously. On this basis, by the age of 16 we already get cyborgs capable of performing the most complex strength elements. Take a look at this combination, for example, which consists of 3 most difficult dynamic elements on the bar. All of these features I mentioned above make the Chinese unrivaled in calisthenics as well. Their short height, early age of training, serious approach to training itself and the cult of sport allow them to do something like this. Who else can do that if not the Chinese? However, despite this, calisthenics in China is quite underdeveloped. I once attended a workshop of Ivan Marchioli from the Bar Brothers team in Beijing, and I can say that there was not many people, and for the most part both of level of athletes and the event itself did not excite me. This is because this sport is not official and, in the opinion of the Chinese, does not have a great future in this country. It is unlikely that you will be able to earn good money or become the pride of the country by practicing calisthenics. Meanwhile, in America you can do calisthenics and you will always find the people who will pay you money for this experience. Chris Hare is a great example of this. And it doesn't matter how you look in the face of the country. The culture of the East is strikingly different from the rest of the world. And once you get to China, you realize it from the very first minute. In general, due to the fact that YouTube and a huge number of other sites are blocked there, such sport as calisthenics just not get the proper resonance. At the moment they are training on schemes of the most popular teams, such as Bar Brothers, and create their own branches in order to train together and develop this direction in their home country. I even have a Bar Brothers Beijing t-shirt and have been featured on their Instagram page a couple of times as an athlete of their team. If you are doing calisthenics in China, it means that you are late to gymnastics, but you still want to train. And sadly, if you train calisthenics in China, you cannot build a serious career around it and you cannot become the best in the world. But still, what makes me think that Chinese are the best in gymnastics? The question is quite rhetorical. Just open Wikipedia and look at the rankings, from which we see that the first 4 positions are occupied by the Chinese and Japanese. A Zhang Buan, who was first on the list at the qualification stage and second in the final standings, at the age of 24 already has 7 gold medals. Of course, it should be said that the Japanese are also one of the best in gymnastics and definitely compete with the Chinese. But in fact, the approach to training, anthropometry and popularity of the sport in these 2 countries is very similar. By the way, if you want to know what gymnasts can do in calisthenics and vice versa, you can check out this video where we compared these 2 directions.